were talking about earlier with the Kronbogen versus E100 happen here pretty soon.
Oh, good. I kind of wanted to see how those will go down, because we don't get to see them just square off very often. And, we shall see. Everyone's moving into position. Things are finally getting a little tighter. I think this is good for the E100s of Rival, as range at the extreme is not going to work in their favor. And there we are, T1 poking up, spotting Flak. Not Executus, by the way. I wonder if those E100s can move around slightly east, maybe? Pick off No Nick, maybe catch someone out of position. But the 50 Bs from Rival need to get into position.
Here's what I like about eClipse, is they understand we don't want to brawl with 3 E100s. What they want to do is they want to make 3 E100s move. So they're setting up to get cap pressure, but they're spreading out, so they have different lanes of fire from all over the map. And so when those E100s have to move to respawn, there's going to be a gun waiting at every single alley. And those E100 guns, despite what actually happens, should not be accurate while shooting on the move. Now, RNG sometimes has different opinions on that.
And Zakum peeking out a little far, and these are those angles working. Right there. That's eClipse making it happen.
You have to remember, these E100s, they have 2,700 HP. That's a lot of HP you have to chip through, and eClipse are just slowly chipping away at it. If you've noticed,
there it is. T1 moving up, bounces one, but 797, and another bounce from Exo. So E100 armor actually saving him a little bit. He may have lost 2 huge shells of hit points, but
and Flak puts one into the wall, and now T1 Diabetic's going to pull forward. Zakum's going to come around on the other corner, though, make T1 Diabetic back off. Cap down to 30 seconds. Zakum ends up going down to Vetro. Vetro coming in with that 50B.
And cap pressure at 22 seconds. Is there going to be a reset, though? There's no one actually moving in from Rival that I think is going to feel.
Smooth goes down to T1 Diabetic. Now T1 Diabetic should also pick up the kill onto Flak here in a second. Actually, no, T1's reloading, so is No Nick. So no one ready to kill Flak, but this is pretty much over at this point. Once again, eClipse didn't really do anything mind-blowing, but they did what you need to do when you play against a heavy lineup of 3 100s. Slow it down, spread the map open, make those E100s pay every time they peek or move around. If you notice, anytime they tried to reposition, there was a different gun waiting to get 1 or 2 shots into them. And while it doesn't seem like a lot, when you do that for minutes upon end, or in this case, almost 8 minutes, that's a lot of HP that ends up being racked up.
Yeah. And there we go. Executus on reloads out in the open. Should go down momentarily. And that's it. That's cap. Yeah. Not even going to need to get all the kills. That's eClipse with 4 against the 1 of Rival. Rival's going to swap sides now, and Rival's going to be on attack. So that's what I want to wait for, because Rival on defense, that wasn't really much of that. That didn't really equate much of anything. It was just eClipse tearing apart Rival's defensive positions. Rival trying to figure something out, but they really just didn't get anything done with it. They dealt damage here and there, but I didn't feel like there was any strategy.
There was no solid game plan. There was no real decision making.
It wasn't an active strategy. It was very passive. Set up your positions, hold on.
Hope you get a pick. Hope you find something you can capitalize on, but nothing ever presented itself. Or in even the few opportunities they had that presented themselves, they didn't act upon it.
Yeah, and with that, that's a straightforward, just solid play. 50 Bs dealing, of course, the most damage. Batchat following it up, of course. E100 from Exo. Of course, he just sat around shooting heat shells all day, so he picked up a few.
And then look at T1 Diabetic, 60 fantasy points. He's, like I said, he's had a really solid night. I'm tempted to see what excited to see what he does at the end of the night, even with this potentially being a short series at 5-1, unless Rival pick it up. T1's going to have racked up quite a lot of damage and kills and a good amount of fantasy points.
So did you didn't pick T1 tonight, did you?
No, I did not, but after this performance tonight, I may have to revisit it in future matches.
Yeah, I know we've been playing around with the idea for the last few weeks, whether or not we decide to start talking about T1 being possibly a top pick, but he hasn't quite performed to that level beyond the rest of his team. The more consistent players are the people who keep putting up good numbers as well. T1's showing up, and every match or so, every other match, he does put up good numbers, but not quite enough. It's I don't want to put my bet on him yet, but maybe later in the season, give it a week or two, and if he hits a stride with the tanks that he's playing and the way that he's been playing and the roles he's been put in, he might actually become a fantasy pick.
And the thing to think about with this is you have to look. This is a very similar situation to Apex. Apex have so many solid players that it's really hard to pick from. And right now there's
not enough to go around.
Yeah, everyone of course goes to the solid picks of Dodo and Oxmanthus because they've been top performers for a long time. But even then, I wouldn't really second-guess myself necessarily for going with, say, External or Canadian Impact or Brett. They're all players that can put up great points, and they can really perform. And if you look at this, it's a very similar situation to eClipse right now. When you first ones that come to mind with Fantasy, Vetro, Tigers, Photo Finish. They've been performing really well this season, especially Tigers since he came back into the starting lineup. But T1 Diabetic, Dark Gods is a tier 8 player, so those don't really get a whole lot of pick. But then outside of that, even Exo's been playing pretty well since coming into this lineup. He was one of the star players for 07 last season, did really well for them, and then he jumped over here to this lineup, and he's continuing his form. So there are a lot of players on eClipse where I don't want to say that one's a bad pick necessarily. Well, some of it may come down to map dependencies. In this case, T1 Diabetic keeps doing this, especially in this sort of Tiger system where he used to perform so well. I think he's a solid pick.
All right. Well,
end of the day, just that's it for short. Is I think T1 Diabetic can be a solid pick going forward.
Okay. Well, that does it for Fantasy right now, though. Well, let's talk about Ruinberg.
Okay.
Because Ruinberg, usually the defensive-sided map, and it's going to be eClipse to start. This is over? Do you think it's over? Because Rival's having a rough time against eClipse. eClipse is just such a dominant team. At this point, defense on Ruinberg, this is where it happens.
I'll say this. I've watched Rival's previous games on Ruinberg, some of the replays, and they have gone for some rather, let's say, fascinating.
Oh, come on. That's so vague. It's aggressive. They go crazy. Come on.
It's hard to say aggressive when a team brings 3 mice on Ruinberg attack.
You can be aggressive in 3 mice. It's just aggressive very slowly. See, it's like...
That's one way of framing it, I guess.
It's like, have you ever seen a snapping turtle? Have you ever, picked up a snapping turtle?
No.
Have you ever seen one on the ground?
Yes.
Have you seen how slowly they move?
Yeah, but you do not want to be anywhere near the front of it.
Exactly.
But the thing is the mouse doesn't have that same sort of bite. Its gun's pretty weak. It's just a lot of HP you have to chew through.
Don't get into details. Details. It's like a box turtle. Okay, it moves really slow. It's really angry. It bites things. It hurts.
Next patch, with all the changes to the mouse, the buff and DPM. Then this is a bit more. But right now, its DPM is still.
But you see where I'm going with it, right?
I see where you're coming at, but
it's not.
At the end,
it's
I don't
not
know
a predator.
Yeah.
It's a slow-moving turtle tank. It's got armor, it's got hit points, durability. The point is it has durability, and it can bite back. Because the thing is, the most dangerous animal in the animal kingdom is not a turtle, okay? Come on. There are way more dangerous animals that could destroy a turtle. But the thing is, the point is, the mouse, you can be aggressive. You can be like that, but you don't have to be fast to be aggressive. You could be aggressive and fast elephants and great things, you know?
Well, let me put it this way. They're 1 in 4 on the Ruinberg attacks.
Yes.
There's some solid stats for it.
Okay.
How well is that mouse attack strat working out if that's what they got?
Well, if they go with the mouse attack strat, sure. But maybe they don't go with the mouse attack strat. And maybe it just is something a little bit more reasonable. Maybe something swifter. I don't know.
It's attacking on Ruinberg. To do it successfully, what you have to do is you have to set up well early. You have to find some nice positions, find some spots to maybe get some damage done a little bit, especially either in the south or in the north.
Okay.
But then you have to make guns turn around. There's that one central position right on the north end of the Delta Village where they can very quickly turn and shoot south, and they can turn and shoot north, and they can get that cross. And so often we see tanks, batch hats especially, make that cross in the north. They just get picked off.
Yeah.
If they try to go in the south, they don't get into the village in time. The tanks rotate. Guns are waiting for them. They get punished. What you have to do this successfully, and once again, this is one of the hardest things to do. Ruinberg is one of the maps with the best defensive win rates in the whole league. We always say it's a 1-on-1 map, but to attack successfully, there are a couple ways to go about it, but what it comes down to is getting guns turned, getting them to split their fire, and finding ways to get into their defenses at point blank where you're not paying that toll. We talk about teams having to pay their toll to get in position.
Yeah.
And so you have to buy an easy pass. You have to find what your easy pass is, and you have to get in there without taking a lot of damage and without paying that toll. If you can do that, then you're on equal footing at the bare minimum. You're at a blow for blow in that sort of case, and then maybe you can find a way to win it from that point. The problem is that there are so many different ways that the other team can charge you that toll going into it. They just pump out so much damage that you just can't recover. But that's going to come down to the next map because we still have one more round at Ghost Town, and none of this may matter if Rival can't get a win right now.
Yeah, I should have stopped you and said I wanted to talk about Ruinberg as the stopping point no matter what happens, because now that eClipse is on defense, Rival's on attack.
Well, they have to make this work with 2 50Bs, 3 100s, and 2 Tier 9 bats. Will Eclipse have a 113, 3 50Bs, an E100, a Batchat, and a Udis.
That is a healthy lineup from Rival. So they'll be sporting, 15,500 hit points, and 14,100 from Eclipse.
They start off with 1,400 more HP than Eclipse.
Yes. And also the armor that I think should come into play there. With that many E100s, you're always going to absorb maybe 1 or 2 shells that otherwise on a different tank, like maybe even a 113, would bounce, right? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but the skirts for the E100 are superior.
They are spaced armor, and then they have the tracks underneath, which is even more. So heat shells and whatnot going into it will struggle. APCR shells, such as the ones the 50Bs will be firing, won't struggle with it as much.
Yeah, and in my experience, the 113, even though it does have decently armored sides, compares
it's not spaced armor, I don't believe. It's just the tracks it has on it.
Yeah, just the tracks effective spaced armor, not truly spaced armor intended like the 100s. This attack, though, coming out of Rival, nice aggressive opening play. Yes, aggressive.
Or are they going to go for the blind push where they just come around the corner and try to catch something out on the right here?
They won't catch anything, but it does look like they're going for just that.
They might catch Exo, that first E100. They could volley him out.
Possibly. They'd have to go all the way around, though, and the 50Bs from an Eclipse will surely come a Tiger and Ventro.
Once again, that's 3 100. It's a lot of HP to chew through.
This is true, but if they decide to derp all over Exo, 50Bs can come out, nice response, just take out one of the E100s in response, and then all of a sudden, maybe that turns it on his head.
Yep, you got to have those effective trades. Maybe they could get in there with it.
I think Eclipse is set up better right now to deal with that situation. Rival could make some headway, but reasonably Eclipse is ready for this. And then Flack's going to try and figure something out for some reverse angles here. Using that spaced armor. And try and find Photo, but I don't think he's going to be able to. Not going to be able to at least deal any damage for a bit. I think that's going to come down to a few other tanks on Rival. Those E100s we were talking about a minute ago.
And once again, Rival have been doing this all night where they just kind of slow it down. They sit here. Thing is Rival are attacking right now. There's 8 minutes left. They don't have any cap pressure. They're just kind of sitting up. They're maybe waiting for a rotation to come out of Eclipse. But Eclipse are just too well drilled. They understand they're not in any pressure, so they're not going to make one of these overly aggressive plays.
Yep. And so, now, ladies and gentlemen, we wait. It's going to be up to Rival to figure out what they want to do. They're going to be getting tanks into position while Eclipse sits and waits back for them to, well, make some mistake, cross a certain line somewhere. J-Smooth and Tesla chilling out in the 50Bs are going to be watching the backside as E100s are going to be, well, I'm actually not sure exactly what the E100s want to do, but they're kind of close to Exo.
Here's something. These E100s have Exo pin. They're just from Proxlite, so he can't really move.
Well, he can, really. He knows he can back off.
Well, but look at this. They've left the 2-cap open, and now Rival are dropping tanks around. If they can get some cap pressure and screen the 3-4 land side, they can make Eclipse have to rotate through all these E100s. And that could be a way for Rival to force some pressure and get some good damage onto Eclipse and maybe take down a gun.
Possibly. 50Bs, Tesla, J-Smooth, are going to be moving south, following our Batchat APs, Executus, and Knight, as they begin to clear the southwest portion of the map. Now, those 50Bs, without the support of the 50Bs onto the E100s of Rival, I bet what happens is this, Rocks. We see that Batchat T1 Diabetic in the west side of the map. I bet you the moment we see any significant spotting onto the 50Bs or onto those Batchats, the Batchat APs, that the response is immediate from Eclipse. They just move forward, they take out the E100s, done.
That's why this is risky. Now, the only way they can make this pay off is if they can get into that cap and get up and against that north wall of that 2-cap where they can be very close to those E100s and get some return fire off once Eclipse do make that move.
Yeah, and I think that might be a split-second decision there from Rival deciding to actually send their 50Bs back towards the north to support the 100s, realizing maybe going all the way to the southwest is a little risky. But also, this is probably what Rival was thinking. Let's send our 50Bs southwest to support our Batchat APs as we take a little more ground. let's not take a huge risk and send a batch at AP completely alone.
Sending them down there to cover them.
Yeah, a little bit of cover, just get them into position or get them out there. Then once everything's all done, we'll just return to the rest of the team. That's not too hard. We'll only be gone for a moment. And so they return. And, well, T1 Diabetic is spotted against Executus. It's going to be Dark God Zim probably zeroing on his position. And yes, he is. Looking off into the west. But no, looks like he's actually going to look back towards the corner that we saw E100s earlier. And yeah, this is going to slow down a bit. It's going to stay slow. It's about 4 minutes and 30 seconds left. Rivals not got a lot of options left for them. And eClipse, Ron, they're just holding on fine.
There's no pressure coming out from Rival. There's no real move. 6 minutes have gone by at this point, and there hasn't been so much as cap pressure put on by Rival.
Yeah, Rivals taking it slow. They don't want to risk losing it. They realize the pressure is on, and that's just what happens when you end up winning.
The problem is waiting this long also makes it so you can't win necessarily. So yeah, you don't want to lose, but waiting for this long can have the same effect.
It's one of those problems where if you don't take the risk, you actually kind of limit your ability, your range for reward, right? If I don't go for an attack and I only defend, I can only win by defending, meaning I have to defend on my
brawl going on. T1 should come out the better over Executus because Knight is actually nowhere to support him.
Not quite he doesn't quite have the angle he wanted to, but it's not possible. And Knight's going to decide actually to move north now, as that's going to be the trigger. The attack focus onto Exo does not pan out as well. Flak Zakum going to have to move on, try and find new cover. Unknown One's taken down by half. Zakum now by half. Knight almost completely taken down before any kind of support comes in. Knight does take down No-Nick, and Exo is going to go down as well. But that's 2 tanks for 2 tanks, and the hit points are now in favor of eClipse, where Rival started out with 1,400 hit points more than their opponent.
Yep, we talked earlier about having to pay a toll on Roenberg. Well, eClipse just made them pay a heavy toll to start this push with those E100s. And now the 50Bs are boxing them in. T1 Diabetics closed ground. J-Smooth takes a shot. A lot of shots. 841. Flak getting focused out as well. Vetro takes down Unknown One. Flak's going to be the next one to drop. J-Smooth also being focused out. And this did not pan out for Rival. Trying to slow it down and then make a sudden push. eClipse having none of it. Able to sit there, put their feet up for a little bit, but when it came to it, they were able to jump right onto their feet, start fighting when they needed to, and just not panning out for Rival. Looks like Tigers is actually going to go for the ramp kill onto Tesla. Doesn't get it. Vetro picks up the kill.
Nice. And that's it. eClipse, 5-1. There we go. They win it out. Rival put up a solid fight, but you could just see it. eClipse is on top of their game. They're coordinated. Every single win was by a sizable margin in the fact that sharing hit points, eClipse was on point.
Yep,
you saw it.
I definitely agree. They were sitting there. Their focus fire was better. They held their angles. They understood when they needed to not be aggressive. There were certain times where they did get aggressive, which I liked, but more often than not, they were able to stay a little bit slower. Now, there's a difference. I talk about passive defenses not really working because their other team has time to kind of figure out what you're doing and break it down. Yep. If you notice, Rival didn't really get a whole lot of intel. They kind of knew where they were, but they didn't make any plays. And when you have this sort of lineup of 3 100s and 250Bs, it doesn't really provide a whole lot of flexibility and ways to get around there. Looking at the damage, Vetro, 3K, 3 kills, 56 fantasy points. Tigers also doing pretty well for eClipse. Tesla, 3K, not bad for Rival. Flak, the other one, 2,100 damage, essentially 3 shots connecting for that E100. And then down here at the bottom, Zakum, that E100 got focused out when he pushed around that corner. Didn't get off any shots, really.
All of them fizzling it or something at that point, because you can notice he actually has 100% accuracy. But like we talked about, the spaced armor of an E100, that's why E100 fights are hard.
Yep. And looking at the series totals, looking at the fantasy points,
T1 comes out ahead. 337, that's not bad.
Vetro still putting up 300, essentially. Not bad. Exo, 309. And this is what I was talking about. Look at this. All of these performers all in the same range for eClipse, really. And it's just No-Nick, No Skill dropping off. And then the Tier 8 player, Dark God Zim, even he's doing 270, which is pretty respectable for a Tier 8 player. Well, actually more than No-Nick, No Skill had.
Yeah. Altogether, what would you say? Your thoughts on eClipse that match?
I would say they were tight. They did what they needed to do, but at the same time, I wasn't necessarily overly impressed by a whole lot, just because a rival didn't really ask a whole lot of questions. There wasn't a whole lot of work they had to do. They did the bare basics, and they did them well. But at the end of the day, this wasn't them being put through the gauntlet or something. So I don't want to talk up eClipse too much in this case.
You know who can talk up eClipse?
Master Pupil.
Master Pupil, sir. Welcome back to the broadcast. Tell us how that match went, because to us looked easy for you guys. Looked like you guys had it.
I wouldn't say easy. I mean, we underestimated them a little bit. We ended up losing one on Himmels. That was very close. But, it was a good set of games. And, really hoping Rival does better, towards the later part of the season.
Yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about that Himmelsdorf battle? And because Rival was very mobile. They kept themselves moving. They didn't get hung up on cap like most other teams we've seen that go for West Side. They kept moving, and that seemed to throw you guys off. It felt like that was hard to react to. What was difficult about dealing with Rival and the way that they approached you guys that Himmelsdorf battle?
Well, as you said it, we weren't really ready for it. I mean, we practice a lot, and there's certain rotations that we practice for, certain flexes, that we get ready for. And, that's just something we weren't necessarily, ready for again. And, it just kind of started working out in their favor more towards the end, especially towards the end.
Okay, yeah, because it was tricky. I wasn't quite sure if it was because it was just a difficult scenario to deal with. It was just something that was one of the lower probability situations for you guys. You just didn't think you might run across something. Okay, well, I guess you're prepped for that next time. Yeah. So there's that. And then Ghost Town. It looked like you guys had that one handled.
Yeah. I mean, Ghost Town, we're not that bad on Ghost Town. We've had I think this season we've had a few rough games on it, but overall we're pretty comfortable with Ghost Town and how it went tonight.
All right.
Yep. Now, you guys played pretty well tonight on Cliff, but that's been a map that you guys have kind of struggled on recently. What have you guys been doing different to kind of turn things around, or was this just Rival playing into what you guys have been doing all along?
Well, this is a mix of the communication that I've been talking about, along with the practice again. We've just gotten really used to a lot of the maps. I'm not saying we're, like I said, we were gods at proc, right before we lost on it. But we're starting to get an overall good grasp of every map, and it's starting to work out for us in the long run.
Yeah, I think we noticed that on comms too. Now that you bring it back up, because communication-wise, it felt like everyone knew already. There were no granular details being discussed. It felt like everyone already knew all of those. It was more like, let's go West Side, and everyone just did. Are you guys really getting to the level where you're not talking about where to go? Everyone just knows what to do when the call is made. Is that?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. That's what it's turning into. I mean, of course, there is still a lot of explaining. It's Tigers. He loves to explain every little detail. So, there is explaining, and that's a good thing. But, the reactions are just becoming second nature. And, like I said earlier, it's really starting to work out for us now.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys on the battlefield next time. Any last words, Master Pupil, before we see you?
No, great games, Rival, and I'll see you guys.
All right. Very polite, sir. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.